I'm down. Aiden, could you revive me? Aiden? Aiden! What? What the?
Growing up, split screen was a cornerstone aspect of gaming. Going to a friend's house and duking it out together on their Xbox 360 was how I played the newest and greatest.
Sometimes they had a PS3 instead, and apart from minor aesthetic differences, it offered the same overall experience. This went on at a steady pace until my teenage years.
With the introduction of the new console generation, this new era for gaming brought onto us increased graphical fidelity and a bigger focus on online play, but at the cost of split screen.
Some games still supported in some capacity,
And while the now last-gen consoles weren't going anywhere,
split screen gaming had taken a back seat starting this generation. It was no longer prevalent or essential in gaming culture.
Advanced Warfare was really the last time that anyone that I knew really cared about split screen, and even then it was very short-lived.
Advanced Warfare.
It was also around this time that the lives of those around me were changing, as was mine. We were moving to new neighborhoods, we were changing schools, we were becoming different people. It had no longer become viable to get together and play split screen anymore. It was also around this period, though, that I made new friends, and we found our own ways to spend our time together.
But sometimes, it's fun to reach into the past and see if it works with the new.
Despite all of us growing up in different parts of the world, some of our shared experiences make for a connection that almost makes it feel like we got to experience that same thing together. One of the games that exemplifies this the most is Halo Reach. Although to varying degrees, we see eye to eye on Halo Reach, in that Halo Reach is an awesome game. Even my friends were introduced to it after its heyday like it. It truly is one of the top exemplars for split-screen first-person shooters.
One night not long ago, I was hanging out with my friend, Dan, who is real, I swear, he just lives in a different part of town, drinking water and socializing, as two bros would normally do. At one point, Dan suggests we get together that weekend and play some Halo Reach. Not just a simple playing of Halo Reach though, he was talking a whole day, in-person, split-screen co-op, legendary campaign playthrough, which all came out of his mouth rather naturally. This was onto something. I didn't think he was serious at first because that seemed like a daunting task, but I gave it a second thought. I haven't played some good old-fashioned split screen in a while. This could be a good time. It's been so long since I've been asked to play split screen that it felt like getting a letter, just like ye olden days. And just like that, I fell into his trap. I was convinced. But was he serious? There was a little moment of, yeah, you know what? Are you serious? Because if you are, I'd be down, and I am serious. So our plan was set in motion, and we were going the full mile. Mountain Dew, Doritos, energy drink. I can be quite gamer if I do say so myself, but I've never gone full MLG before. I was stepping back into familiar territory, but with a new twist. It was refreshing. It was exciting. The day comes. We were supposed to start early at 11 a.m., but we didn't until 5 p.m. But that's okay. We were going to play some Halo Reach. We popped that in, pressed play, and sat there, hopped up with excitement and anticipation to get our minds freaking blown, and the game wastes no time in doing so. The intro sequence starts, and the good vibes flood in almost immediately. It just sucks you into the screen with that pumpin' orchestral music, and the view of the big celestial wasteland that is space. It all makes you feel like you're about to embark on something very epic. This momentum is flipped on its side at the main menu, where we're greeted by the vast landscapes of Reach. It's still epic, but this scenery, it's a lot more serene. It gives off this big vibe of welcome, but also exudes an air of mystery. It might make you think, what goes on beyond that path? There's an air of mystery beyond those mountains if you're seeing this for the first time. But to me, it kind of felt like seeing an old friend. There's not much going on, just the view of the mountains with the sounds of the rain and one of the many tunes of the Reach soundtrack. This minimalism really helps build the excellent ambiance, which just engulfs you in what you're looking at. Reach. Nowadays, this isn't very impressive on a technical level. This is just a 720p drawing, but gosh darn if our inner 12-year-olds didn't just yuck it down. So we set up our game, and we don't bull around. Legendary difficulty, and skulls. Just the simple ones. No need to overcomplicate things. After pressing start, hearing those beeping sounds is like a confirmation for blast off. It all starts with a cutscene. It's a slow but dramatic start. We start out in space, again, with the view of Reach, and the camera goes closer and closer to the ground floor after each cut, until we make it to a volcanic terrain, where we see a soldier's helmet on the ground with a cracked visor. Just as you can finish soaking in that visual imagery, it fades to the title screen. Reach. I wonder what that's all about. Hey, it's that same helmet, but without the crack. Alright. So it's actually Dan's helmet, which we see him putting on from a POV shot, as he's riding in a warthog. As he disembarks from the warthog, we're reintroduced to what occupies the world and what our adventure is starting. It's all familiar, and pretty badass. We hear a snippet of military logistical talk in some strategical operations station before entering it, which lets us know we're in with the toughest of the tough. We are Noble 6, the newest member of Team Noble. We're briefly introduced to the team, and then we roll out, at which point, yikes. The frame rate starts dipping when something as simple as walking is going on.
Now, this is as good of a time as any to shoehorn in an explanation for this video's premise, since I can't seem to find a way to naturally bring it up. It was at around this point that I found myself asking the question, does Halo Reach hold up? Not a particularly interesting or complex question, I know, but I needed something to answer for the sake of this video. It was, however, a genuine service to myself, to help me gauge my own expectations. I like Halo Reach, but are these feelings reflective of the actual game, or are they carried over from the nostalgia of my younger days? Between when I first played Halo Reach and now, a whole console generation has passed, bringing over new standards for gaming, and while I don't play that many new games, there are plenty quality of life improvements that I've now been adjusted to that weren't available back then. Could it be that Halo Reach, and by extension split-screen gaming, is nothing more than a relic of the past? Well, in search of answering this question, I'd like to take you along my journey of playing Halo Reach by recounting the events of this playthrough.
Level 1. We're sent out to investigate a distress signal, in a helicopter no less. Very nice. This intro sequence is clever visual symbolism. We're descending into the unknown, unaware of all the trouble that we're about to face. Let me ask you this. What other place do you know that's located down below, which is also associated with bad things? Hell! This is a clever nod to the title, Halo Reach. Reach, the titular location of the game, Reach, in Halo Reach, is the centerpiece of the events of this game. The Covenant come from above down below, and they create hell with their invading force, slaughtering humans and just overall creating a bad time. After disembarking, we can get a proper feel of things and yikes. There's already a problem rearing its ugly head. It's not the sensitivity. By default it is real low, but you could change that in the settings. The limited screen size blows, but after a minute it's easy to look past. The real kicker is the frame rate. After getting used to 144 frames per second, it's really hard going back to just 30. That's more than 4 times less frames. I did the math. During cutscenes it's fine, since 24 frames per second is the standard for movies, but it's a different story during gameplay. I made mention of these glaring technical problems to Dan, but the words that came out of my mouth may have sounded a bit different.
Oh my god, this is trash!
It's a rough reintroduction, honestly. Not unplayable, but it's gonna take some time to get reacquainted with the feel of the game. Anyways, we make our way through the level, investigating the environment and refamiliarizing ourselves with the world of Reach. Nothing much going on, just some walking around, and oh my gosh! Alien invasion! Not that you'd think it's a big deal with how casually everyone talks about it.
We're attacked by Covenant forces. The Covenant is on Reach. I repeat, the Covenant is on Reach.
I mean, I get it. We're war-hardened Spartans. But even an infliction of surprise in how everyone reacts to this would really emphasize that this is something to be remotely worried about. We're faced with some jackals and grunts. Oh wait. Skirmishers. Whatever. They're kind of bullet spongy, but with enough bullets, they'll die. That low frame rate isn't doing any favors for the gameplay. Only a few minutes later comes that part of the level. The one that probably gave the most players trouble. Our first encounter with the elites. This is our first hint of a challenge. Deaths are piling up. The pistol is essential to dealing with these guys, since the assault rifle isn't effective in the distance that you need to keep from the elites to avoid an instant death. However, with every death came a fresh batch of pistol ammo, and I was getting a lot of it. It seemed like every dozen seconds we got grenades flung our way. I've died like 6 times here, most of them by grenades. With persistent planking from cover, we eliminate them, and I am handsomely rewarded with the Covenant grenade launcher. This thing is a massive help for ridding of elites, but it can be a death hazard. I almost killed Dan with it, as opposed to me definitely killing myself with it. After encountering a few more batches of Covenant, we finally make it to the communication outpost, and I finally get my hands on the DMR. This thing makes combat so much easier. One shot in the head and bam, you win. We close the door and make our way into the building. We find a dead body and a girl who was hiding away. She seems very distraught and irate. Something bad must have happened. Oh! Another Covenant attack! And this one's got like a sword made out of energy or something. Oh man, this is intense. The screaming, the shouting, the shooting, and especially that music. It just gets you pumping. With my blood rushing through my veins and my trigger finger itching, I run my way to the enemies, ready to take them on, and I die immediately. I guess the cool music doesn't change the fact that this is legendary. All the while, Dan gets on a forklift and just destroys everything. Further in the halls, we meet the energy sword elite, and he has no mercy on me. But it's okay. After respawning, I get my revenge and get to use it in the most underwhelming fashion on 2 enemies. And poof, end of the level. This level has a good ramp up, but it's the most boring level in the game without a doubt. The results for our death tally are... Oh yeah, for that extra layer of challenge, we decided to count our number of deaths, like a mini competition. So here are the results. Level 2. It's at this point that it kicks in for me. What felt like a whole hour was only the first mission, and I agreed to a whole ass campaign. At this pace, this would be going on forever. I made mention of the game's length so far to Dan, but the words that came out of my mouth may have sounded a bit different.
Oh my god, this is going on forever!
If we took that long so far, can I even handle the rest of the game? No! I agree to this and I've got to see it through, so I make my way to where the action is. The catwalk/guard tower area is a prime place to hide and plink at the elites, since it gives us the strategic advantage of the high ground and increased cover. This part was pretty exhilarating. It really felt like I was engaging in a combat puzzle, where you have to be as effective as possible with your ammo while exposing yourself the least amount possible. Having run out of DMR ammo and needing to advance to complete the level, we descend from the catwalk and finish off this segment's batch of Covenant with whatever's left in my assault rifle and with whatever we could scavenge from fallen enemy soldiers. And let me tell you, this led to a revolutionary moment. Bzzzt, and boom! This is where I truly got a further understanding of Halo's combat loop. Energy pistol for shields, assault rifle for finishing shots. This is quite obvious to Halo fans, but as someone who only casually played them, I now see the light. So yeah, that was quite effective at ridding of these guys. At the garage area, we find the missile remote. Ooh. After a failed attempt with Dan using it, I give it a try and land some hits, while Dan finishes off the last wraiths up close. And damn, that was pretty nice. A Warthog is dropped off for us, but only a minute later Dan jacks the Revenant off of the elite driving it, and with that we get into a pretty good rhythm. While Dan eliminates the surrounding enemies with the Revenant, I take care of the objectives on foot. This part with the AA gun was kind of annoying. One major mistake led to a checkpoint restart, but the checkpoint was quite generous, so it wasn't all bad. With the AA gun activated, we get more reinforcements with a Gauss Hog, and with that Gauss Hog we annihilate. We make it to the next bunker, probably missing something on a diverging path to the right, but we make it to the next objective area, so oh well. We encounter our first batch of hunters, and let me tell you, they're a lot trickier to deal with than I remembered. Dan, however, destroys them easily. We move on to the white building area thing, and it's good. I'll touch on to why later. Not without some good resistance from the Covenant, however, we tactically sweep the floors one by one, until the tippy top, where some buff elite got Dan and almost got me, which would have triggered a checkpoint restart. But alas, I pulled off a clutch move and saved us that hassle. So that's a well-deserved self-pat on the back. With the rockets just laying around, we shoot down the enemy ships, and bada boom, we win. It felt too easy, and that's maybe because we're playing in co-op. We see the sky, telling George we aim to please, and get to visit Halsey, who is just a poor George. There's a lot of quippy talk here, but not the obnoxious kind you see in movies sometimes. Very nice. The tally for this level?
That will be all, George.
Level 3. Here we go, the token quiet mission.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
There, you may need these. High velocity, armor piercing. You'll take the hat off in a leap at 2,000 yards.
To my surprise, this level is kind of a breeze. But again, that could be attributed to the fact that we're playing in co-op. What's neat about this level is that, although to a limited degree, it brings to life some of Halo's initial concepts with the wildlife. Our progress is rather smooth until we make it to the point where we have to play tower defense for a bit. Not that it necessarily became hard, but we have to be on our toes, otherwise we would be met with death. The turret segment in the mountains is a We really have to coordinate our movement, and I spammed the revive mechanic. Overall, smooth level. This is where I sorta started getting the hang of it. Level 4. The human folk engage with a full frontal assault onto the Covenant folk. Gets blown up though, so we have to fight in the front lines on foot. Once they're all down, we get ourselves a nice and shiny rocket hog, which I proceed to drive up to the first Covenant building we see and get myself killed, alongside the rocket hog blown up. All the while, Dan survives this and blows up the building. Well, with our first target down, we proceed onwards. We make it to the industrial building area, where we have a cool little co-op moment, where I crossed the bridge on foot, eliminating the smaller enemies, while Dan stayed back and sniped the bigger enemies. Apart from that, and the gas tank to blow up, this portion is kind of bland, but the segment after that isn't bland. We have to take care of 2 wraiths and destroy another Covenant building. We really have to be savvy with getting rid of the wraiths, since our Revenant and Ghost end up blowing up, and we're in the middle of an open arena with not much cover. With a bit of strategy and abusing that respawn system, we blow up everything. Oh yeah, and I guess some hunters, but this encounter was oddly easy. Onto the helicopter turret section. While I get domed like 20 seconds in, Dan magically survives through the whole canal, despite only being able to shoot from one side of the Falcon. What the f***? We make it to the other side of the canal, crash landing because the force field disables the Falcon's internals, and we have to destroy an even bigger Covenant building. After some kerfuffling, I rush in and make it into the building, getting rid of any immediate resistance before dying. After respawning, Dan and I rush in together and just smack that. It's rather easy. Mission accomplished. We exfil with an unnecessarily dangerous leap to a helicopter, but rule of cool. We make it, and everything seems to be going according to plan, and oh, laser hits our ships. Things may not be going so well for us human folk. Overall, while there is still some nice spectacle to this mission, it's pretty unremarkable when thinking about it afterwards. The tally for this mission? Level 5. Things are getting kinda tense. The Covenant forces are causing more destruction, and backup's 48 hours away. We can't wait that long. Kat's got a plan up her sleeve, however. It turns out she knows about some super duper top secret government military operation gone wrong that we just so happen to have been involved in, and she wants to replicate that incident. Now, don't tell him I told you, but this is also where Dan noticed for the first time that Kat's arm is a prosthetic.
What?
Which is ridiculous because that's like the first thing anyone would notice from her character design, and for that I bestow upon him the title of Silly Goose. Anywho, we get the green light on the mission to plant the top secret bomb onto the Covenant ship. Here we go. The beach part is over rather quickly. There's not much resistance to make it to the station. In there I find a drop shield! Heck yeah, this thing was the back in the day. And it's pretty useless. There was no time to make use of it because almost immediately we make it into the ship and blast off into space. This space sequence is pretty fun. I could see my younger self not being into this, but my younger self was stupid. This makes for a great tension reliever. I thought that this would obviously be the cutoff point, but no, the mission just keeps going. We make our way into the Covenant ship hangar. The part where we make it into the terminal room makes for some cool stealth kills before going loud. The reinforcements were a surprise annoyance. On our way out, we employ some sick-ass tactics. One person shoots the enemy, they break off, the other person engages and finishes them off. We make it back to the ship, but we have to babysit it before we can leave. This defense portion is kind of ass, but it's fun figuring out the rhythm of the fight. Once we clear out the area, George tells us that he has to manually detonate the bomb, so he yeets us out and sacrifices himself. On top of this epic moment of sacrifice, we see the scale of these ships as we plummet our way back onto Reach, and that's what Halo does pretty well, creating a sense of scale. Level 6. We're back on Reach, and the Covenant are going with a full force invasion on New Alexandria. Armed with nothing but a pistol, we make our way to where the fight is. This makes for a bit of tension at the beginning, and it also gives contextual reason as to why we only have pistols, and respawn only with pistols. We meet the brutes in this level. Whack! They're girthier than elites, but don't pose as much of a threat. Just shoot persistently at them, and they'll fall. Eventually. Jetpacks! Aw yeah. It's kinda tricky landing it since it puts you in enemy's line of sight, or you misjudge the distance you're traveling and you fall off the platform, or maybe we're just bad. Once we make it to the rooftops, I have more or less fully gotten into the zone. I can't not notice the visual drawbacks, but it's a matter of it no longer being a hindrance, hence why we are now pulling off a few sick-ass co-op kills. I swear, it felt cooler than it looks. On to the last bit with the Warthog. We're in a good headspace and have a flow. We die a few times here, swapping strategies a bit to figure out what works here, and we keep it going. By the end, we've kinda cheesed it. Dan goes to the final terminal before I make it to the objective before it that enables it, and just like that, after a brief period of being split up, our squad is finally regrouping. But alas, that's where our story ends. Just like that, it ended before it even began. As much as I wanted to keep on going forever, it was inevitable that, eventually, our time would come to an end. Our optimism blinded us to reality. How foolish were we to think we could finish Halo Reach in one go? I looked to my side, at my friend, who was with me, by my side, in those few hours in the battlefield. We shared a defeated moment, after which we said our goodbyes and parted ways. On my ride home, I had some time to think about what had just happened, and it led me through a revolutionary train of thought. My friends, my pastimes, what were once things I never gave a second thought about, are now things that I really look forward to, and find myself thinking about. This day of playing Halo Reach really gave me the perspective that I needed to seize the moment, and appreciate what I'm doing for what it is, not what it will become. Because in the time that I spent not acting in the now, thinking of the then, this moment of now has slipped away from my fingertips. Maybe Phil Spencer was onto something when he said, with people's busy lives, it's not as easy to get everybody in the same physical space. It's one of the advantages that Xbox Live obviously offers. We fail to realize we're no longer kids with all the time in the world, a time where all we want to do is grow up, and when that happens, we realize that we didn't understand what it is that we had been asking for, but by then it's too late. We are now adults, with responsibilities, and very limited time. Maybe this limited time is why social media is so prevalent in our culture. It allows us to communicate with our friends and close ones whenever, wherever, yet we feel most alone because a screen simply cannot replicate the physical interactions you have with another person. I always wanted more Halo Reach, and I had it again, but it always ends the same. This time, rather than being mad at it, I should just accept it, and be happy that it happened at all. Because that's what life is. During all this time, within this moment, I only thought in the moment, not from outside of it. But that time has a limit, and that's why I shall cherish this moment. Cherish this moment as something to go by. Cherish your life, your loved ones, your toys, your games, your pets. You never know the moment when they'll be taken away from you. Worrying about it won't stop it. All you can do is just take in the moment and enjoy it. And this was one of those moments. Let's face it, I can't play Halo Reach forever. It's time I got real with myself and took that job at the quilting store. It's the end of that journey, the end of that chapter. All I can do is turn the page and begin the next one.
Just kidding. We're gonna pick this pack up in a few weeks. If you're curious to hear the end of the story, stay tuned for part 2 where we'll finish the campaign and I'll share my final thoughts.